Good evening and welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. My name is Garhen. Hello, Jennifer. Nice to see you. I figured you'd be here. And Kelly's around there too somewhere. Hello, Cindy. Nice to see you as well. Boy, we've got a really interesting lineup. Tonight's going to be good. I think tomorrow night's probably going to be better, actually. So we'll play it for what it is. And I want to start by reading a post from one of our group members who posted this in the group. They posted it publicly, so I don't mind reading this out loud. And we're going to be dealing with this subject again tomorrow night. And this is a subject that we're going to keep coming back to. You know, and as I said to Kelly, here's one of the things. When you start standing up, when you start choosing for yourself, choosing out of your own sense of being, you're in for a rough ride. There's just no way to say it. I mean, you're going against the tide. You're going to be going against the stream. And I'm not talking about the stream of life. I'm talking about the stream of sleeping humanity. So I'm going to read this out, and then we're going to get to what we were talking about for this evening. And keep in mind, this will be addressed tomorrow. But I thought it's a great place to begin, a great place to start thinking about it. And without further ado, I will start from the top. So it says, I hope I can share this here. I feel like it is a safe place to share, and I need some advice. The short version, 2 years ago, my son told me about the abuse with my granddaughter by the stepmom, and then I was told by my granddaughter was being possibly molested by the grandfather, my ex. And I have been very public about it. So I contacted Child Protective Services, but my son is lying and said he never told me anything. And then when CPS contacted him, he admitted to the abuse. One of the lessons I've had to learn so it doesn't swallow me up in grief is to look within to find my self-worth and realize who I really am. And it has made me a lot stronger for the first time in this lifetime. I feel like it is a privilege to be alive and not, please beam me out of here. I listened to the video broadcast on being the only one standing, and I just cried and cried. And I think the reason for that is everything that I said was going to happen to her did. And it's nothing special that I know this. You can see it around you all the time when you stand up, when you speak up for something different than the norm. You're in for some pain, and luckily that can be dealt with. I have lost my 4 kids, grandkids, all family and relatives because of this, but my time alone was and has been very much needed, very blessed, and grateful for my time alone so I could clear my thoughts. Here is the but. It's been 2 years of really mean and ugly emails, texts, and posts, people posting ugly things about me on my Facebook page. I do talk about my granddaughter and do videos on my business page and threaten legal action, and others have threatened legal action against me. I would stop everything right now, and it would fade and be forgotten, but I would never have any peace knowing my granddaughter probably is still being abused. I am lost as to where I should go from here, but I feel like I can't quit on my granddaughter. My heart hurts for my granddaughter. It feels like a dark cloud hanging over me. I wish there was some kind of manual that could tell me what to do. I've been told to let it go. But what exactly does it mean? What am I supposed to let go of? My heart and Kelly's heart goes out to you. We know who you are, and other members of the Facebook group will as well. I won't mention your name on the public video that'll be on YouTube. But I want to say that tomorrow evening we are going to deal with this, and we are going to deal with it well. And we will keep coming back to these sort of discussions as long as people have problems. These are the sort of questions that I really want to see. I want to see the questions that are digging at your heart, that are eating up your mind and your life. Why? Because helping you get through that is what really matters. You have a beautiful gift, each and every one of you. And the clearer you are with yourself, the clearer you can shine. The clearer that gift will be manifest in your life. And we, as a species, need your gift. We really do. So we'll leave that for this evening, and we will be picking that up tomorrow night at 6 p.m. on the Help Awaken YouTube channel. Not the Awaken the World YouTube channel, but the Help Awaken channel. For tonight, though, we're going to talk more about spirituality, defining spirituality and spiritual ego and the pitfalls in there. And this is kind of important because, unfortunately, I see a lot of people have fallen into this ego trap. And it's a very easy one to go down. So, without further ado, what is spirituality? Anyone? You know, this is a word that's bandied about, that's tossed about and misused and miscommunicated. Okay? Your clothes do not make you spiritual. The way you look and sound does not make you spiritual. Nothing on the external makes you spiritual. What we're talking about is the degree to which you have conscious awareness of what is going on within your being. And not only awareness, but the degree of dealing with that. The degree to which you have surrendered, the degree to which you have moved past the consistent thoughts. Good. That's a good answer too. My connection with my higher power. And that's what Cindy says. And indeed, when we talk about that connection, you know, that's what we're really looking for. And how does that connection come? That connection comes in silence. It never comes out of the busy mind. Ever. And, you know, Kelly and I are quite fortunate in that she gets to see how things work without mind. She gets to see firsthand how things are done without the thought processes involved. And it often trips her up because she'll be thinking about one thing and she will always say to me, I just can't keep up. And I keep saying, quit trying. That's why you can't. You're in your head. Get out of your head. When you're out of your head, what needs to be done rises naturally. It rises from within you as a natural course of your being. There are no questions. There's only the right step forward that you need to take. What is spirituality? Well, of course, organized religion is the business of spirituality. It is not about being spiritual. You know, the one thing I've noticed in almost every major religion, and let's be perfectly clear, Buddhism is not actually a religion, it's a philosophy, okay? Nowhere ever is it claimed, nor are people to worship Buddha as a deity. That is a misconception on the part of Westerners, driven by the church, unfortunately, the Christian church. But when we look at religion, we find that with the exception of the Sufis and the Gnostic or mystic traditions within each of the faiths, the bulk of the faith is really about reiterating what's in a very old book, trying to pass that lesson on to people, you know, en masse. But there is very little done in actually increasing the level of conscious awareness, raising the consciousness of the church members. And this is where it turns into more business. Because ultimately it's really about the take when it comes to churches. And you can't blame them. We have chosen, and I want to be clear about this, we have chosen. And that's true. Absolutely, sweetie. Whenever you organize a club or form a bureaucracy around truth, you lose the truth. It becomes about the bureaucracy. That's the main survival point. Why? Because without the bureaucracy, they don't feel that they could disseminate the truth. So they focus on the bureaucracy, and that's why I call it the business of spirituality. Spirituality, as I said, equals conscious awareness. And when we're talking about conscious awareness, well, you know, we're talking about the degree to which you are aware of what is going on in your mind, aware of what your perceptions are, aware and catching yourself when you're making judgments and pulling back from those judgments and choosing to look at things objectively, to learn to observe dispassionately what is going on. All from that peace and quiet place within you. A place of no thought. A place where the answers arise spontaneously. And absolutely, truth does stand on its own. Truth needs no defender. It never did. But of course, the problem with truth is we always want to be the ones who are right. And that's where the truth comes into being defense. It's not in the defense of truth, it's really in the defense of our stand on that. We become aware of the internal chatter. We become aware of the noise that's going on in our head. We become aware of the consistent tapes that keep repeating themselves over and over and over again, locked in ways of behavior that are quite autonomic. And it takes quite a bit of conscious awareness, of conscious attention to catch those autonomic habits of ours and begin to shift them away from that. Because ultimately, it really is about mind. It really is. One of the biggest issues with our consciousness rising, and as I've said before, literally, when your consciousness rises, you have gone through a rabbit hole. You've gone through an interdimensional tunnel, and now you're in a slightly larger universe. Your view has expanded. Your perceptions have expanded. And in that new space of being, you quickly forget what it was like to live at that old space of being, at that old level of consciousness, at that lower state. But here's the truth of it. Oh, you were wrong once too? Yeah, me too. Yeah, it was about 49 years ago. Good one, Cindy. We all forget from whence we came. We forget, and I have to be really clear about this. You will, if you have not, you will experience every aspect of humanity. You will come back here time and time again. You will be the murderer. You will be the murdered. You will be the rapist. You will be the raped. You will experience all the ups, all the downs, all the ins, all the outs, all the possible configurations of what it means to be a human being. And there's a very necessary reason for that, but what we really need to focus on right now is keeping in mind at all times that everyone else around us, no matter how sleeping they may appear to be, we have been in their shoes. We have. Now here's the beautiful thing. If your consciousness, if you're coming awake in this life, if you're awakening, you're going to awaken a lot quicker in your next life. Because it's evolution. It's always forward. It's always growth. Me, I was well into my early 30s when it happened. And I am really looking forward to the idea of becoming fully awake, should I choose to come back here. Maybe at age 10 next time. Continuing the process, continuing the growth. Don't ever think that you're going to be somehow moved back in your development, that you could fail here, because you can't. Here's the tricky one, understanding spiritual ego, and boy, this is a big one, and it starts with the last little thing we just talked about. Remembering from whence you came. Remembering those around you who are still asleep, that you were there too, and looking upon them with compassion. Not without frustration, which I'm guilty of sometimes. Very guilty of that sometimes. Not with a mind full of chatter about the other people being asleep. That is not spirituality. That's spiritual ego. That's your ego talking. And here's the thing about ego, okay? If ego has a definition for itself, if it has an identity, and you work to change that identity, it will very easily grab on to the new identity. And in grabbing onto that identity, we can, of course, become, a spiritual person. And yes, many are. But many are actually sitting in spiritual ego. There's no raised consciousness there. They may be able to talk about a few things. They may, you may find them sitting in meditation, or they typically do it rather show-offish. Should be public, should be out in the open. That's all part of that spiritual ego. What happens is the ego will use spirituality like Trump is using the US presidency. Now, that sounds funny, and it is funny, but it's also very true. You know, the ego will take anything and make it relate to what it wants. And we have to be on guard for that part of ourselves at all times. Another sign of spiritual ego is what we call hopping. Okay? And these are people who will hop from one spiritual practice to another, to another, to another. You will notice that they never really settle down. You know, they may be going to yoga on a regular basis, but you'll notice in yoga that they're not actually focused on their yoga and focused on the body communication. They're busy communicating with everyone else. They're busy trying to look good. They're busy trying to be a yogi instead of simply doing yoga. And this applies to everything. It really does. It doesn't matter whether you happen to like reading the Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or books by Eckhart Tolle. Or it really doesn't matter. What it comes down to, though, is if your goal is truly a spiritual life, if your goal is truly spiritual awakening, conscious awakening, stop hopping around. Choose a path that suits you and stick with that path. You see, all paths lead back home. All of them. Even the path of the devil worshiper leads back to God. Even the path of the cannot be convinced otherwise, old school Baptist, fundamental, Christian, they will come home too. All of us do. All of us. And I'm not saying it's easy. You know, when we deal with people who are in spiritual ego, that's like dealing with people who use religion in the same way. You know, there's this egoic sense of righteousness that comes in. Well, I have the answers. I know more about the universe than you do. I'm more awake than you are, so you should do as I say. Any of that sort of talk is not spiritual. That's a very sleeping person exhibiting spiritual ego. And we have to be really clear about that and understand, I'm not picking on anybody about this. I'm just saying, for myself, I am constantly on guard for spiritual ego. I am constantly reminding myself, constantly looking inside for those signs that I am not focused on my spiritual growth in awareness, in raising my consciousness, in maintaining and strengthening that connection to the divine. And when you see yourself acting in such a way that you are somehow lording your conscious level over someone else's conscious level, you really are in the same state they are. Really. It may appear different, but it's not. You've developed a spiritual ego. You've taken on another covering on yourself. The old covering may have come off, but you've put on a new cloak, and this cloak is that of the spiritual ego, not of true spirituality, not of raising consciousness. And there's many aspects to this, but another one of the most common ones are people who are consistently messing around with past lives. They forget that they're living this life. You're here to live this existence. You are not here to try to relive, reconnect, spend time with what you consider to be, well, this is my family from my last life. 100% spiritual ego, you fooled yourself. Because it isn't you that was there in the last life. It wasn't you. It was that which you truly are, which manifests all these different eyes. Thousands upon thousands of them. Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And an interesting point to that, of course, is they're all actually happening simultaneous because we only ever have now. Past, present, future are a myth. They're an illusion of time. And, we've talked about time, and there was a great video on time and relativity quite a while ago, I guess a couple of months now. Boy, time is really flying, speaking of that. And, today I happened to read in the paper, there was a fantastic article and a big show they did on this. And as it turns out, time travel is actually occurring all the time. And I believe I had talked about that, about how the faster you go, for example, if you're spinning around the Earth in the space station, the Earth actually starts to move slower underneath you in relation to you. Your time is slightly ahead of Earth time. And the faster you go, the faster that appears to, that actually magnifies. Where an event that happens now can appear to happen in the past to someone moving fast enough. And that's really what it comes down to. As I said, we are moving through time. Time does not move. Time is always the present. Right now in the second. So the concept of messing around with past lives, the concept of focusing on past lives, of spending time with past life family, you're deep in spiritual ego. You are not experiencing spirituality. You are not engaged in conscious awareness and conscious awakening. You're engaged with trying to relive something that wasn't even you in this life. Now keep in mind, you can't make mistakes in this. It doesn't matter what you do. The universe, that sea of consciousness, is infinitely malleable. It changes in heartbeats before you've even done it, to make sure that what you've done serves you and serves the whole. Serves the whole in conscious reunification, in reminding ourselves with our Creator. And of course, spiritual ego is always driven by egoic needs. People who are stuck in spiritual ego will demand money. They will demand reward for their services. They will demand recognition. They will want to be put on that pedestal. Stay away from the pedestal. Don't get on it. Be your humble self to the best of your ability and work on carefully and with a great deal of consciousness and awareness, raising your consciousness, awakening. Pitfalls on the journey, and this is where there's a lot of people who get really, really out of whack on this. And Kelly and I talked about this a lot, and we still talk about the concept of should and should not. There are no such thing. There are no mistakes. You cannot make a mistake. There is what you do and the consequences and responsibility that comes with your creation. But there are no mistakes. There is no blame. One of the biggest pitfalls, of course, is thinking about how awake we are when we are amongst the sleeping masses. We must understand that others are still asleep, but we must look upon that sleep with compassion, because that sleep represents suffering. I'm going to say it again. If you have not watched the Hindi series Buddha on Netflix, and it's not short, I think we're on episode 30 some odd right now. It is a fantastic account of Siddhartha Gautama and his rise through from being a prince right through to being an ascetic and eventually becoming the Buddha. And it is amazing. And one of the things you will notice about Siddhartha is no matter how asleep a person is, he only radiates compassion to them. There is nothing in him that is speaking about to himself about how asleep these people are or how lost they still are. If anything, there's the realization that he himself was once there, and the honest, heartfelt desire to free each and every one of you from that false perception of suffering. And that is my desire for you too. That is why I do these. It's to free you from that false perception that you are suffering, to free you from the concept that life is suffering. And so many of us carry this around. So many who, you know, the one thing about ego you'll notice, okay, everything is in the future. Everything. When will you be happy? When you die and go to heaven. Or, man, I can't wait to get off of here. I can't wait to get off the earth. I can't wait till I'm in disincorporated spiritual being again. That's spiritual ego. That's a basic misunderstanding of the universe and why you're here and who you are. And we're going to be talking about that tomorrow night again, because that plays very much into defining who you are. You have to understand what you are. You have to understand why you are here. And in this we have what I call replacement righteousness, okay? The righteousness of being saved by God, if you were a Christian, or by Christ, you know, is replaced with the righteousness of, well, I'm a spiritual being. I know more than you. I have more awakening consciousness. Can't you feel my magnificence, my radiance? What a crock. We teach what we need to learn. The lessons I give you here speak to me all the time. Sometimes I'll watch my own video, and I have to watch my own video after. It's kind of funny, but I do. I watch my own video, and sometimes I will watch myself look me directly in the eye and tell myself something from me. And I'll go, I don't remember saying that, but damn it, I needed to hear that anyways. And there it is. We teach what we need to learn. You want to grow in spiritual awakening, you want to grow in consciousness, start teaching it to others. Start trying to set others free. And when I say that, you can't grab them and push their head under the water to force them to take a drink from that river of consciousness. But you can certainly, with compassion and with love and with care, point out the folly of how they're thinking about things egoically. Point out a different path. But have no thoughts in yourself whether they choose to follow it or not. You see, each of us is on our own path here, and it is not for another to determine whether your path is valid or not. Why? Because every single path is valid. That sea of consciousness that split itself into a limitless number of shards of itself, literally blew itself to pieces into this relative universe, it is experiencing itself through itself in a myriad of ways. Every one of us on this planet alone, there are 7.5+ billion ways of looking at things here alone. Multiply that by hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of species and planets across the universe. And you begin to get an idea of how vast things are, how beautiful things are. You know, one of the big pitfalls, of course, is wanting to escape the dark night of the ego. And, you know, we've talked about this. I call it the dark night of the ego because it's not the dark night of the soul. The soul is fine. The soul is manifesting itself more and more into the being, and the ego is what's suffering. And, of course, we call that the dark night of the soul. But I've recoined that the dark night of the ego. And one of the big pitfalls is wanting to escape it. If you want to escape the dark night of the ego, you're not ready to escape it yet. And we'll have another video on the dark night of the ego. We'll do that this week. There's some more I have to say about that, some more ways that we can help. Incidentally, I went and had 3 teeth dealt with today, and the dentist said to me, I think I've tortured you enough for today. Come back in 1 week and I'll finish the job on the other 3. And to be honest, my very loving wife has done everything to make me comfortable. She allowed me 45 minutes of rest from working today, and fed me. So I'm doing pretty well, actually. I really am. And you know, here's what it comes down to. I know, honey. Hey, back to work. Back to the deck. Back to the pond. Truly escaping, and notice that escaping is in quotes, okay? Truly escaping the perception of suffering. Let's look at that carefully. Why is escaping in quotes? Well, escaping is in quotes because there is no suffering. And I got to tell you, you're not the only one who struggles with this. I'm saying it. And there's a piece of me that's going, you're off your rocker, because, man, I tell you, I've suffered in my life. But when we look closer at that suffering, we find out that that suffering is generated within us. It's not external. You know, it doesn't matter what anyone else says to you. It is what you choose to do with it that determines whether you're going to feel harmed by it or hurt or suffer, or whether you can grow from it, or whether it's something you just have to let go right by you and not be in the way of. Get the eye out of the way and let it pass right through. The perception of suffering, truly escaping that, begins, of course, with letting go of false concepts. And there are a huge number of false concepts that we buy into all the time. Well, the first one is that we're born and that we die. That is not a truth. We appear to be born, manifested into this physical world, into this illusion, into Maya, and we would call it being born. And then we appear to die when our body stops working and there doesn't appear to be any life in it anymore, and we would call that death. But in fact, they're just points of view. They really are. I've died twice, and both occasions the transition is a thought away. And you will realize quite quickly that birth, death, rebirth, all of it is all one thing. It is not duality. It is apparent duality. You know, there was a beautiful post that I posted earlier from Neil Donald Walsh. And in essence, he had said, you know, there's no difference between God and I, just in proportion. But I still have all that power. And that's right. We do. Absolutely. We are here to learn to be that conscious, responsible creator. And we are creating all the time. From the moment we come here, we create and we create and we create. The difference is we're doing it with this tiny, busy, out of control mind we have. That which we would call our ego, our false sense of I. That's one of the biggest false concepts. And the other biggest false concepts that we have, one of the other biggest ones, is that the universe is somehow out to get us. That God, or that sea of consciousness, the creator, whatever you want to call that ineffable, the more, can like us or not like us, hate us or not hate us, banish us to hell, put us in heaven. And as I answered to a post or a question that Lydia had put up on the group, I said, you know, the idea that heaven is a place you go to is pure hokey. And she said, well, why should I believe you? And she was right. Why should she? You have to feel. I'm not asking any of you to believe me. I'm asking you to feel what resonates with you, to become the authority of your own being again, and anything that I can do, that Kelly can do, that we can do to help make that happen for you, we want to happen. Another false concept, of course, is that you can screw this up, that you can truly have a bad life, that you can do things that aren't going to benefit your development. That's not true. Please believe me. Just like a child in the playground. You know, children learn really the same way we're learning at a conscious awakening level, at a spirituality level, at a consciousness level, okay? And how do children learn? Trial and error. Well, you go out and you fall off something and it hurts, okay? Probably not going to do that again. Or maybe you will. I know I did it over and over and over again. I just figured out ways to make it hurt less. You know, but the basic mind of a child, okay, doesn't have a lot of those thoughts going on in it. It's pretty much free of those, and it is out there exploring and learning through how? Not through reading books, but through direct experiential knowledge. Experience. That is what you're here for. You are here for experience. You are here for evolution. You are here for your own growth, but it is not a school. I wouldn't be here without the resonance. Maybe clarify that a bit, Cindy. Like I said, the delay is back a bit from my speaking, so I'm not sure what you're referring to right there, but I would love to know. Another false concept that we have is that any one of us is worth any more than anyone else. You know, a great post, and I believe this was Jennifer who put it up, and if it wasn't you, Jennifer, I do apologize to you and to whoever did post it. But there was a beautiful post talking about the rungs of a ladder. You know, it referenced that. And, you know, I, of course, look to the caste system in India. You know, and our own society, the idea that someone can be beneath you because of what they do. And that because of what you do or where you're at, you're somehow further ahead. Well, you know what? You need to stand on the other person. They are the foundation. They are the support. In our society today, we have the people who make sure all the essential services work. That we have running water. That we have the ability to turn on the tap and get fresh drinking water out of it, or not so fresh, depending where you live. But I bet you it's a lot better than some of the water I've been forced to drink when I was in Africa. All those people who handle our sanitation, our garbage, who serve us our coffees, who hand us our meals through drive-thrus. We don't go to drive-thrus, but I know a lot of people do. We see the lineups. It drives us nuts. Oh, I understand now. Thank you, Sydney. I appreciate that. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. We're really here to serve, you know. I need to watch my videos after because my higher self does the talking. I try and keep myself out of the way as much as I can. Bits and pieces of me come and go, but it's really that higher being that's doing the work. Another one of the big false concepts we have, and of course that's related to the very next sentence, is the idea of releasing the concept of I. Now that, you know, we have to be clear on this. I am Garhen, and that I am not Garhen. Okay? I can still be Garhen, but not hold on to Garhen. I can still go out there and express Garhen as Garhen wants to express, fully knowing that I'm not Garhen. That what's expressing itself is a combination at the state of awareness that I am at of both my egoic personality modulated and modified and under direct control of, and that's really not the right word, guidance is the better word, under direct guidance from my higher being. And that higher being doesn't give me that guidance all the time. And in truth, it does. What happens is we're either listening or we're not listening. And I confess there's times I stop listening. There's times we all stop listening. There's times when we think we can do it better. There's times when somehow we think we know better. Give that up. There is a sea of consciousness out there that knows all. Before it's even occurred, before you've even asked, before you've even thought the thought, that which you need is manifest in your existence. It's just a matter of you recognizing it. And you know, Kelly used to suffer from this. She would ask the universe for help, and then she would have in her mind all the exact ways the universe was supposed to help her. As if that was actually going to help. And I had said to her one day, I said, you know what, honey, the one thing you have to do when you ask the universe for assistance is take your hands off the wheel. What you're really saying is, please drive the car for me. And then you keep your hands on the wheel. And even though your higher being's trying to turn you left, boy, part of you still thinks you want to go right. So you start fighting it. You start fighting that wheel for control again. And here's the kicker. Your higher self, that which you truly are, has no desire to control you. That's why I said control is the wrong word. It is guidance. It loves you. It wants you properly united with it and that sea of consciousness at all times, where every thought, every part of your being radiates that love and joy and powerful spiritual being that you are. Yeah, exactly. When you take the hands off, everything changes. But as long as you're asking God for help and then refusing to let go of the wheel, God isn't going to tear the wheel out of your hands. It doesn't work that way. You have free will. I say all the time, I should have listened because something tried to tell me this or that or warn me. Yeah, we all do that, Cindy. I mean, like I said, I've got a big dent in the back of this, otherwise fairly well-shaped skull, but it's, you guys only see the front. There's baseball dents in the back here by the number of times that Mother Nature whacked me on the back of the head with that titanium baseball bat, front-end loaded too. We all do this. We all sense it. We all know it inside. And then we go ahead and do whatever the hell we want anyways. And then we're surprised when it doesn't work out the way we thought. And really, it's kind of funny. And when we talk about escaping the perception of suffering, there's one thing I didn't put down on here, and that is humor. Humor and spirituality go hand in hand. Do not kid yourself. The more you become awake, the more you awaken, the funnier all of creation becomes. You realize that God, that sea of consciousness, has one hell of a sense of humor. And guess what? We're the butt of most of the jokes. I've always said, from a spiritual perspective, one of the funniest things that human beings do is have sex with each other. It has got to be the most hilarious thing from a spiritual perspective. We make such a big deal over this. And I don't know why I'm bringing that up right now, but it just caught me as being incredibly funny. I've talked with other beings who pop in on Earth every once in a while, and they've all said the same thing, that the whole sexuality thing with human beings is so far out of whack and so funny that it actually makes good jokes in a lot of other places in the universe. Like, hey, you want to go have sex like a human? Well, hold on. I'm going to need 2 hours to fix up my makeup, and I'm going to need 2 hours to go to the gym and pump up and make sure I'm looking as big and powerful as possible. And then if circumstances are just right, we can get together. God forbid you don't make that phone call in the morning. It really is. And, speaking of funny, what's even funnier is watching a bunch of people standing around when they notice that two animals have started to have sex. It is. I don't know how I got on this topic, but my higher self is taking me there, so we're going there. That's it. But there is nothing funnier. I was out on a safari one time, and I was surrounded by about 40 people, okay? And we were there, and we were all talking about the lions, and these two lions started to do it. And you should have seen the people turning away. I don't want to see that. We are funny beings. We really are. And, it's not just sex that is funny. I mean, so much of what we do is really funny from that higher perspective. And there's a lot of things that don't appear so funny. And these are the things that we need to deal with. It's all our choice. It always was. It always will be. Free will. You got to take that to heart. Today we received a letter from the bank. And in that letter from the bank it said, well, Canada Revenue Agency, which is the Canadian equivalent to the IRS, although not quite as nasty, okay, they send a letter out that apparently they've detailed all the banks to do, and what they want to know is if you have citizenship in the U.S. as well for tax purposes. In other words, they're fishing. And I said to Kelly, it's for you, you deal with it. But ask them the right questions. Ask why. And it said right on the letter that if you don't do it, well, you could be fined or there could be other problems for you. So I said, well, ask them. So when you phone them, say, well, since you made the threat in a letter, what exactly could I face for not giving this information? You know, learn to stand up for yourself. Learn that you are that sovereign being, and what you choose in your life is for you to choose, not for others to dictate to you. You know, one of the best ways we can define spirituality, if we want to look at something outside of conscious awareness, is the degree to which you stand powerful and complete in your being. The degree to which your presence has an impact on others. Those. I know, hey? Sex to Revenue Canada. You know, there's got to be a good joke in there somewhere, but I'm going to leave that one because it probably doesn't belong in a spiritual video. You know, and here are a couple more points that we have to address, okay? Practicing what we read, practicing what we ingest when it comes to our spirituality. Oh, you can hear our chimes outside in the wind. Makes a beautiful sound, actually. You know, I catch Kelly on this one all the time, you know, and it's like, yeah, there's definitely a joke there. I'm going to have to think that one up and maybe just post it in written form. I'll say it was from Kelly. I'll make it her fault. Learning to practice what we read. Yeah, banks do give us a good screwing. You got that right. Don't even get me started about banks. You know, the first thing I say when I walk into the bank is, I have infinite compassion for who you are as a person, but I hate what you do. You're one of the people responsible for the enslavement of the human race under a monetary system. Again, more food for other videos. Practicing what we read, practicing what we listen to, practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. How do you get to that pinnacle of spiritual awareness? How do you enjoy and maintain that blissful state of conscious awareness of your Creator and you, and no separation between the two anymore? Practice. You know, we had to practice to ride a bike. We had to practice to learn how to write. We had to practice to do math. Well, these days you don't. You just have to be practiced at pushing buttons on a calculator. But, you know, back in the day, you had to learn math. You had to learn grammar. You had to learn pronunciation. You had to learn all these things. You had to do work. You had to do practice. The same goes with our spirituality. The entire world is doing everything it can to keep your mind anywhere else but focused in the present moment. Our entire system is designed to keep you off balance, to keep you always worrying, to keep your mind always full with something. And a lot of it is trash that comes right through the video screen, right through the TV. Hours upon hours of mindless entertainment. Hours upon hours of wasted time. When you honestly decide, when you really, 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 really are tired of suffering, when you fall so deeply in love with that sea of consciousness, and you wish to experience that sea of consciousness directly for yourself, then and only then will you put the energies into what you need to do. And it really is about priorities, always. Choices. You know, and I've said this to Kelly before too, you know, if you want your perception of suffering to end, you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to do for that? You know, in the case of the Buddha movie or series we're watching, you know, and I'll relay just a tiny bit so you can understand, okay, Siddhartha Gautama was a prince. He had everything. He was destined to be the emperor. Okay, he was going to be the head of the Shakya clan. He was going to be the ruler over all the Shakya kings in the Republic, and they all loved him. And guess what? The people loved him too. And he had a wife and he had a baby. But when, by happenstance, he became aware of the suffering of others, and he started to learn about the suffering of others, and then his own suffering, which he had been kept from so long, that which the king feared the most came true through the king's actions. Siddhartha, who was to become Buddha, was so shocked, so broken by the suffering, that he wanted a way out no matter what. He was learned as a prince. He had studied all the scriptures, he had studied all the texts, and he didn't agree with them. He left behind everything. He left behind the wealth, he left behind the emperorship, he left behind his wife, he left behind his child, and he gave everything up and put on the ascetic's robes and took on a life of meditation and spiritual journeying. Why? To find an end to suffering. Not just his suffering, but all suffering. All of our suffering. Kind of reminds you of what Christ did in a different way, actually. You know, and Christ's point was the same thing. You are that I am. The kingdom of God is within you and all around you. Split open a piece of wood and I am there. Turn over a rock and you will find me. The search for knowledge begins with questions until there are no more questions to ask, and then the search has to go within. Practice. Priorities. Always. Choice. Choose more and more and more to make spirituality and truly working towards raising your consciousness, and all the things in your life that give you trouble will slowly melt away. That's the truth of it. I promise you. It's happened to me. You have no idea about how bad I viewed my life a number of years ago. To me, my life was miserable. I'm a broken man. Bones in my body broken so many times. Cancer over and over again. Calcium problems with my body. Teeth problems. All sorts of problems. Degenerating spine. Bone spurs on my knees. I've put this body through hell. And you know what? It's okay. It really is okay. Because whenever I begin to feel that way, whenever the exterior world begins to clamp down on me, it is a reminder to me, go back to meditation. Recenter yourself, reignite that candle at the center of your being and allow it to burn bright and still, even though the gale force winds of life may appear to be trying to blow that candle out. Each of you here tonight, each of you who will see this video, every single human being on the planet, you are a gift to each and every one of us. And the people who are the greatest gifts are the ones that we have the hardest times dealing with. They're our best teachers. They're the ones. So the next time you're in a situation where your level of consciousness is threatening to disappear on you and you're heading straight back into that unconscious land of ego, you're getting angry, you're getting upset, you're getting overly frustrated, remember that. remember you can use that as a sign to pull yourself back to that center again. To let go of the idea that it is you who suffers. You know, and here's the beautiful thing. I say the perception of suffering, and I'm not saying that perception isn't very real. I've experienced it. I do experience it. Yes, it can feel very real. But ultimately, it is God who suffers on our behalf. Always. We are God. Each of us. God incarnate. It is not us who suffer. That has been taken from us too. We don't have to deal with that. Much love. Namaste to you all. As always, I appreciate and feel so honored to be able to speak to you and to be able to share with you what I know and what I've learned in my existence is. So looking forward to tomorrow night. It's going to be a great live session. Personally, I think better than tonight. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And we're going to deal with some really tough issues tomorrow. We're going to deal with more of that standing up. More of what happens as you awaken. More of what happens when you have made a choice for yourself. As always, much love to you all. Have a wonderful evening. Namaste. Peace.